So to build this from scratch, if you just go File, New Project, you can change the name to anything you like, but we could just call it maybe Wage Calculator. Make sure that you have Visual Basic selected on the left and Windows Forms app selected in the middle. Okay, and then just click OK. And that'll take you to this empty form. And then, does anyone remember where do we find the controls? In the toolbox. Yeah, exactly. So if you just click Toolbox on the left, or if you don't see it, you can go View and then Toolbox. And then I like to drag it out of the way, so I'll put it kind of here on the right. And then let's go under Common Controls and drag in our 3 label controls on the left. Oh, yeah, sure, yeah. So in Visual Studio, you go File, New Project, and then you name it. Make sure that you have Visual Basic on the left selected and Windows Forms app in the middle. And then change the name to anything. We named it Wage Calculator, or my first project, we had named it a couple times ago. Either way, yeah. And then just go OK. I'll click Cancel though. But that should take you to this empty form. Yeah. And then on the empty form, did that work with the? Do you see the empty form, Mark? Okay, cool, awesome. Then if you open the toolbox, by clicking Toolbox, it'll be like vertical on the left, or you can go View Toolbox. Then under Common Controls, uh, we dragged some label controls, and we'll end up with these 3 label controls on the left. And our text box controls, we have 2 of those. And 1 more label control down to the right and the bottom right, and 2 button controls at the very bottom. And I'll just kind of line things up a little. Yeah, the labels, all these labels, text boxes, and buttons are all controls. Yeah. And so let's assign some properties to these controls. So the 2 most important properties are name and what? Text. Yeah, exactly. So let's select label 1. And if we go View, and then Properties window, which I had to scroll down to find, it was like it's the second to last thing there. View Properties window. Then you can see the properties for each control, and that includes those 2 most important ones, the name and the text. So for label 1's name, let's just leave it label 1. By the way, I like to go here to alphabetical to organize the properties. And so for name, which for some reason is in parentheses, we'll just leave label 1. But for text, let's change it to what? Hours worked. Awesome. hours work. And then for label 2, let's leave the name just as it is, but let's change the text to what? Hourly rate. Sounds good. For label 3, let's leave the name, but let's change the text to what? Gross pay. Sounds good. For this first text box, do we need to change any of the properties? Or should we? No. Well, let's not change the text property. But if we wanted to have some text in there just to start, then we could. Uh, but let's change the name property. Although it's not too important, but let's do change the name property to txt hours. Yeah. Uh, you can name it anything, but just keep track of what you name it because we'll have to refer to it later. So let's change the name to txt hours. And then for hourly pay rate, let's leave the text property blank, but let's change the name to what would be a good name for this one? Uh-huh. Rate. Yeah, awesome. TXT rate. For label 4, now let's actually change both the name and the text property. So what should we change the name to for label 4? Close. Oh, for this one here. Not for the buttons yet, but just for this label. Okay, cool. For the name or for the text? For the text, sounds good. Okay, cool. Awesome. And then let's come back to the close and we'll have that for one of the buttons. Awesome. So the text of label 4, let's change to 0.00. Should we throw in a dollar sign or is it anyways fine? Okay, cool. 0 with the dollar sign sounds good. Okay, cool. Okay. And for its name, what should we name that label? Uh-huh. Wage due? Sure, yeah. Okay, awesome. LBL wage due. And it's all one word, but I'll capitalize the first letter of every word that's not the first. Okay. Does anyone need to see any part of this again or for me to zoom in or anything? Yeah. Oh, no problem. Okay. So here we've got a label with the text property of gross pay. We kept its name the same. Um, just the default. And here's a label whose text property is hourly rate. Uh-huh. This label, its text property is hours worked. Anyone else have any questions? Oh yeah, Jess. Oh yeah, uh-huh. Yeah, yeah. Oh no, that's because you can switch from categorized view where the properties are grouped like by category, or I like to just go alphabetical view because I can never remember which categories which properties are under. And that way name comes first because it's in parentheses, and then text you can always find. It's just easier to find stuff that way. But either way is totally fine. Yeah, uh-huh. Yeah, so there's the categorized properties or the alphabetical properties. Oh yeah, so one label is yeah, the 00 we named LBL wage due. Yeah, but you're right, we said it's text to 000. Yeah. Yeah. And I'll just make a note of these so that when we go to refer to them, we know what everything's called. So we have TXT hours, TXT rate, and LBL wage due. Oh, how's that going over there, Cassie and Arisa? Okay, cool. Awesome. While they're doing that, we can work on the buttons. And so for button one, what name should we give it? And what text should we give it? Uh-huh. Sounds good. Awesome. Calculate. Uh-huh. Nice. Yeah. And what about its name? BTN calculate. Awesome. Nice label, nice name. Okay. Um, and or text, I mean. What about button two? What properties should we assign? Closes the text. Everyone agree with that? Sounds good. Closes the text. And what about its name? BTN close. Sounds good. Awesome. Okay. And on your own, go ahead and assign the text property of the form. So the text property of the form, uh, assign it to be wage calculator. Oh yeah, on your own, assign the text property of the form to be wage calculator. Yeah. Both. Yeah, BTN calculate for the name and calculate, yeah, for the text, and BTN close for the name and close for the text. Yeah. Oh, for the buttons? Oh, for the form, wage calculator. Uh-huh. Right, you might have double clicked. Sometimes we'll want to double click and sometimes sometimes we won't. And so we'll see today, yeah, to see behind the scenes, we'll actually double click uh the buttons. or whatever we want to respond to. So that's great. So that's, you kind of know what's coming. Okay, and to name the, or to give the text property of the form of wage calculator, who can tell us, how did you do that? Uh-huh. Select the whole form? Yeah. Yeah, awesome. Cool. Nice. So select the whole form, scroll down to text, and type in wage calculator. Okay. So there's our form, and uh this is what we kind of had started with last time. So this is kind of the point from last time to this time. Um or from review to new stuff. So does everyone have this though? Because it's important to kind of have this uh, as a starting point. Yeah. Oh, the name of the form, we can leave the default. Yeah, we can leave the default, which is going to be form one. Yeah, we can leave that. Uh-huh. Yeah. So uh, let's do the easy part first. So when we want a button to respond to being clicked, first we double click the button. So we want the close button. Let's start with the close button to respond to being clicked. So to tell the close button what to do when it's clicked, let's double click it. The cursor is going to automatically go to exactly where we need to be to start typing the instructions we want, to happen when that button's clicked. So when the close button's clicked, I'm not going to move the cursor. I'm just going to leave it exactly where it is, and I'm going to start typing what I want to happen when the close button's clicked. Well, when the close button's clicked, we want the form to close. And the way to do that, the form we'll refer to as me. So that's just built in to Visual Basic, which is kind of cool. And then to close it, just like in Access in Excel, how we had functions, and those functions had parentheses just as part of them. Me.close says close the form. That's the instruction to close the form. Oh, yeah. Oh, no, it looks like you might have made, when you went file new project, you might have put like Visual C sharp or something like this. Yeah, yeah, probably, yeah. But that happens a lot. So when you go file new project, there's all this like Visual this, Visual that. Just make sure to go Visual Basic and then Windows Forms. Um, you might try extracting the file first, like in that window, if you could extract at the top. That might help to pick it up. Yeah.